Hi everybody, today I have a solution for frayed amsteel loops that are frayed from being used in thin metal buckles. So I'm going to cover why it happens and how to fix it. So the reason it happens is because hammock suspensions are dynamic, they're not static, which means there's always movement. Your hammock moves, the tree moves, you get in and out of your hammock, you go for a walk, the hammock blows in the wind. Dynamic forces are acting on this. So what does that mean? It means there's constant sawing action on your amsteel loop, especially right here. This part has a movement. I'm exaggerating it right now, but this is what's happening. As this moves up and down, the effective lengths of these two strands change, and it causes this little piece to pulley through here, back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. There's two circles being created right here, and the circle being created by this line and this line are two different circles, which means as this thing moves, this thing has to go like this through here. It's just a little bit, it's just a very small amount, but it does, and that's why eventually we get this. It's just true for any thin metal buckle that is anywhere on your hammock suspension. Anything that is hooked into a line that has your body weight and is subject to a movement. So that's why these mess the webbing up. That's why sometimes the bearings get pulled out. But I have a solution. So check this out. So instead of making a continuous loop, or instead of using a continuous loop that has a berry, you can have a continuous loop that is made with a diamond knot, or 2 knots, or 3 knots, because you have all the extra length because you're not doing that berry in here. I've used a lot of length on this handle berry, but see how we have this knot in here? So now the knot is handling all the stress that was normally handled by this. And additionally, as dynamic forces happen on this, the only thing that's happening is these strands are just pulling the knot tighter. So as this thing arcs like this and the effective lengths of these two strands change, it just means they're getting in there and they're pulling that knot tighter. They're not causing this little motion to happen. And also the knot being tight up against the buckle is also reducing that motion. So the only motion you have now is this, the amsteel flexing away from and towards the buckle, which is not going to damage the amsteel. And you have this motion a little bit, which will damage the amsteel over time, but it's minimal compared to what we were getting with this guy. So this guy takes this little tiny strand, this little short piece, through 1, 2, 3, 4 90-degree bends, all in that short little distance. Plus, it's taking that short little distance and just slowly grinding on it. So we can eliminate that with the button knot. Or the diamond knot, actually. The button knot won't work, and I'll show you that here in a second. So an additional benefit of having a continuous loop with a knot like this is now you have an adjustable spreader bar location. So normally, your spreader bar would be right here if there was a hammock over here. But what if your hammock over here is shorter or longer? You can move your spreader bar without adjusting your ridgeline length or hammock suspension tightness by being able to put this somewhere else on your continuous loop. Check this out. So here we have an example of a 10-foot hammock tandem hang next to an 11-foot hammock. It looks pretty good over here. This is going to be nice and stable. Nice triangle squared up. However, since this is a 10-foot hammock, the spreader pole ends up being bent over here. So now we have a spreader pole that's kind of shoved sideways into this thing, into this buckle, and the same thing on that buckle. The only way that we can straighten this out is the 10-foot hammock guy, he's going to have to lengthen his ridge line and tighten his strap right here. And that means the 10-foot hammock guy is going to be tacoed. So that's not good. Well, then the 11-foot hammock guy, he could shorten his ridge line and loosen his suspension, but then he's going to be hanging like this, like a banana. That's not going to be comfortable. But what if you could, without messing with the hang angle of these two hangers, and without making one suspension loose and one suspension tight, what if you could simply move the spreader pole over a little bit to get a more stable hang? Well, if you had an adjustable continuous loop, you could, because now you can change the buckle position in relation to the gathered end of the hammock, which will take the spreader pole with it. So like say this was your normal setup that you had your continuous loop set up for, but then you use the excess to create this other knot. You could take your buckle, move it down here. Of course, you would need to tighten your suspension a little bit, just this distance though. But now your spreader pole would be moved out here, and your hammock would still have the same effective 30-degree hang angle from the tree and still have the same effective ridgeline length. So both hangers could be hanging in a nice squared up tandem hang and not have to compromise comfort and stability with the tandem hang. So it would just be, you would just have, from the gathered end of your hammock, you now have a couple adjustable points that you can put the spreader pole to help you tandem hang with a hammock that's not exact same length as yours. So that's it for the fix. Here it is on the end of webbing, completely assembled and ready to use like you would use it. As you can see, it makes a nice look, and it makes a full-on 2-strand strength. You can see these strands are coming straight out of the knot, and it's almost like a diamond knot is a perfect match for these buckles. See how it comes out the bottom and matches up, and it's going to reduce all that rubbing on there. And especially with this little part on this Dutch buckle, this little part right here, it actually holds the knot up above those two channels and actually gives the amsteel a little bit of room to move around in there before it actually starts rubbing on the metal. So that's pretty cool. That's gonna really eliminate any of that fraying problem. And one last thing, if you make these for yourself at home, which you can totally do really easily with just a overhand knot, like this, or if you splice them at home, just remember, don't use the Brian Toss knot like I use on my Evo loops, because you end up with a jamming problem. This will jam in there with the two strands, and the buckle will actually tear this up because it's too thick. The dyneema becomes too thick with it buried. So you want to do a knot where the tails exit here instead of exit back into themselves, because it'll be too tight. It'll fit in there and you'll be able to hang with it, but it'll get tight and it'll mess the strands up. I've tested it a few different times and it doesn't work. It's just too thick. These channels are not big enough for the amsteel. But you can totally just do it with a double overhand knot. You can make one of these at home really quick, and you can, if you do happen to get any fraying on here, it's really awesome because you can service this in the field. You can untie that knot and then retie another knot with the frayed part up in there, which you probably won't get a frayed part with the knot on there though. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped you use your buckles. Thanks.